Okay. Howdy, y'all. Not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I am so sleepy. It's insane. But I had to come back. Can't leave my followers without a little streamy stream again. Sorry. But today we're just gonna do a quick reaction stream to this video right here because I love talking about Spider-Man. It's very I get a little vocal warm up in there, but it's a very interesting topic. The second game in particular, which is something I'm very passionate about, and I hope you guys like hearing about it. So, without further ado, let's watch the highs and lows of Insomniac Spider-Man.
Spider-Man is a hero by the people.
What is Ugg doing? He's just running around.
People for.
Bro, get a whole costume and go to LA. Chat's quiet. Brings real viewers instantly. Do they interact with the stream? Because that's what I'm really here for. But also, you're a mean fellow for slapping the yo chat's quiet. I just started, bro. You ain't even let me get going.
The people. He is easily one of the most universally liked characters ever made.
That's a fact.
Despite that, or maybe because of his insanely broad appeal, it feels like
Who is this guy, bro? What a hero. What a legend. Need him at my kid's birthday party.
About something when a new Spider-Man thing comes out. Even when it seems universally loved, there's always some portion of the fan.
God damn! Did y'all see that edit though?
A new Spider-Man thing
Look
comes
at
out.
this.
Even when it seems
that was filthy. Jesus Christ. That was so good. I'll have to learn some tricks from this guy. Oh my.
Universally loved, there's always some portion of the fan base that's, for whatever reason, really upset at.
Okay. So I know y'all think I'm one of these people. I'm not. Miles is fine. I like Miles Morales'. I love the Spider-Verse movie. I love this movie so much. There's only one problem I have with it. It's that scene whenever like they're crawling on the wall trying to hide from his roommate. I feel like it's like real tonally inconsistent. But that's beside the point. I don't hate Miles as a character. I hate having multiple active Spider-Men at the same time. I think that sucks, usually.
And you best believe they will let you know about those problems. Which is why one of the most special moments to be a fan of the character was the release of Spider-Man PS4, because it felt like a moment where, aside from some of the smallest and easiest to debunk controversies I've ever seen, everyone was just really happy about a new portrayal and a new universe. The biggest complaint I remember about the original game was on the open world with no super memorable
I liked some of the collectathons. I think that the landmarks were pretty fun because you could just like swing by, quickly snap and go. And the backpacks on the first playthrough were fun because you got little bits of lore. But yeah, other than that, I think the collectibles were a little much in that game, and I need a little more diversity.
Major side quests, which is a fairly valid complaint that was still really easy to overlook considering the quality of the rest of the experience. Spider-Man finally seemed to have a near definitive adaptation outside of.
Also, I know they made the swinging a lot faster in the second game, but honest to God, I would have preferred them to keep it maybe just a little bit faster and put more emphasis on like more skill-based or like physics-based movement to really just like add so much depth and flavor. It would have been so good. This makes me want to learn how to make video games so I can do it myself.
Comics that just about everyone could get behind. And then tragedy struck. Insomniac decided to give Peter reconstructive surgery. The Miles Morales. Tragedy struck. Insomniac.
Listen. I'm not one to judge people by their appearance. I must say, I have no idea why they decided to do this. I mean, seriously. Like, he was fine here, but it just looks like, not AI generated, this is before that time, but it's just, it feels so wrong. after playing through all this with this guy right here, you know? I think they wanted him to look more like Tom Holland, which is really weird. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just, I don't know why they did that.
Decided to give Peter reconstructive surgery. The Miles Morales spin-off had a noticeable drop-off in its writing, and then with
Yeah, the writing in Miles Morales was a little bad, but I will say, I really like the gameplay of Miles Morales. It's pretty fucking good.
Spider-Man 2, the floodgates really opened. It got brought into the middle of the culture war, people had problems with the writing.
Culture war. Listen, I'm not a culture war guy. I am not mad that you're playing as a you know, a black deaf woman. That's not my problem. My problem is you're playing someone who isn't Spider-Man. That's my problem with it. Nothing to do with, like, none of that. No, none of that. It's just, I wanted some more fun side missions, and I think that I wouldn't mind that particular side mission as much if all the other side missions weren't bad. You know what I mean?
Problems with the number of villains, problems with the rushed ending, and problems with
The number of villains, that's a solid complaint, but I think if those villains had more quality, then it would have been better.
side content.
It would've
once
been
again.
fine.
And even though I did personally like both Spider-Man Miles Morales and especially Spider-Man 2 on my initial playthrough, I have to admit, I have started feeling the same over the last year. I remember all the
My
big,
man.
fun moments and the near perfection of this traversal and combat system, but also the lackluster and sometimes downright bad writing, the empty feeling of some scenes, and the hardly improved side content. And
I feel like the side content made a downgrade. Honest to God, I think it did.
even right as I hit credits on the second game, I could tell there was a difference. Not because I thought it was a significantly worse game than the original, but I think I just
didn't have as
believed in
much
this
heart.
world less. Despite seeing them go through so much, I felt less invested in these characters than ever. Despite there being a lot of good side quests, I felt less invested in the city of
I wasn't a big fan of these glider ones. It just kind of boiled down to move the stick a little bit. It didn't really test your knowledge of the traversal mechanics at all.
New York,
In
and for the
opinion.
first time in 5 years, I felt a little unconfident in where Insomniac was going with this series.
I'm sorry I keep pausing it, but I totally agree with him here. I am very worried about the next game and, to an extent, Wolverine, but I think they're going to put their all into that game. But I am worried about the next Spider-Man game. I think it might not be very amazing.
And I thought for the longest time that what was most responsible for that was the side content, the side characters, and the writing. All of that was just making me less invested in this story and the people that it was following. So when I decided to play through the series again to give my thoughts on all of this, I went in expecting to see a significant downgrade between Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2 in terms of its secondary activities and characters, or maybe just no difference at all. Spider-Man 2 in terms of its secondary activities and
I don't-
characters, or maybe just
the game
no
just
difference
feels
at
like it
all,
has
which
less
makes
heart.
the sequel a little disappointing because a certain level
You know what I
of
mean?
improvement is expected. And then I got really confused because both Spider-Man Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2 show improvements, significant improvements on basically every front, not just gameplay like everyone likes to pretend.
I think Miles Morales not better, but I think its abilities and the abilities in that game were better than how they did it in Spider-Man 2, and I really liked it.
From the way things are packaged to what you actually do and who you meet. In fact, by the time I got to Spider-Man 2, it was such a night and day difference that when I paired it with what I view as amazing high points in the narrative that sometimes exceed the original game, it made me even more curious as to why I simultaneously felt like this was maybe the best game in the series, and also the reason I was less invested in this universe. So in this video, I kind of want to look
I'm
at
interested
the
to
world
hear what he
building
has to
and
say.
pain points of the Spider-Man games, which means that we're going to be focusing a little bit less on plot and
They
gameplay.
keep showing this guy. This has to be the guy, doesn't it? Like, I don't believe they're just showing random footage of this fella in in this Spider-Man mask running around
more
New
on
York.
villains, characters, writing, and especially the side content of each of these games. So we can try to understand how Insomniac fixed almost all of the problems that were holding the first game back and ended up still moving a little backwards regardless. And I think the best way to do that is to go through each of these games, talk about how each of these pain points, and maybe chart a path for the future of this franchise. That does mean that we're going to be talking a little bit more about the negative aspects of these games,
Skip to
but I also
after
want
the-
to reiterate that I'm doing this out of
After the Ray-Ban
baked into the
sponsorship.
identity of this series rather than ironed out, it's a little bit easier to pick apart some of the problems. One of the issues I've always kind of had with the first game is the way that it handles a lot of its villains, which is funny because I feel like people complain about this a lot more in the second game, but in my opinion, it is way worse here. I do think both
What do you
Martin
mean?
Lee and Doc Ock are great, well-developed
That's good.
characters.
That's
I
good.
think they're perfect choices for this game, a lesser-known villain with a lot of potential, and a highly recognizable one that can permeate throughout the series, but everyone else is
goat.
just kind of tossed together in a blender. After the amazing opening sequence that has you going
I like the Sinister Six, but I feel like it was rushed
falls into a
little
bit
bit.
of a rut. The first major story beat from the main narrative that isn't just a bunch of setup doesn't happen until you're like 30% of the way through the game, and until you hit the 60% mark, you're really just fighting random filler villains like Shocker, who's dropped as fast as he's introduced and has
I
no
like
real
Shocker.
effect on the narrative. And then for the last third of the game, the villains all of a sudden go into turbo drive. You have multiple encounters with Martin Lee, you fight Vulture, Scorpion, Rhino, and Electro 2 at a time. Martin Lee basically gets little broed by Otto and falls out of being the main villain right at the end, and then you fight what was always
Violation.
meant to be the true main villain in Doc Ock. Listen, it's not terrible. It's not like fighting the Sinister Six isn't fun, especially as an experienced
Oh, yeah.
Spider-Man.
I love the
Most of these
Sinister
villains get
Six.
next to no screen time and get reduced to a single mission that comes off like a chore, which
I wish some of them escaped and were side missions, or like secret boss fights or something. That would have been sick.
is really weird for four of this character's most well-known foes. And I know it's a hot take to say that the sequel handles its villains better, but I at least think that we can admit that this game doesn't handle them great. Despite some of them lacking a lot of presence, I do like the way that all of these villains are set up.
They're introduced in such a cool scene. God, the part in the raft whenever you're just going through and the villains start, like, you see the villains escaped and then they all jump you on the roof. Oh my god. It makes my spider sense tingle, dog.
With most being at the raft already, and some having existing backstories where they're on parole or at the end of their criminal empire. It establishes this world as one that Spider-Man's been in for a while and has already seen its fair share of ups and downs. I think this was a really great choice, but it's also one that creates a bit of a problem, where Spider-Man himself has been operating for around a decade at this point and has more experience than probably all of the live-action Spider-Mans we've seen combined. But this is also the first time we get to meet this version of Spider-Man, which means that in the second game, when he considers retirement, it makes sense for the character, but
No
for
way.
us, it's that in the second game,
I
when he
never
considers
noticed how
retirement,
stiff that
it makes sense
animation
for the
was.
character, but for us, it
Oh,
feels
why
like we
was it
just
so
got
slow?
here. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. For the first game, I feel like they do a
It
very
looked
good
like a
job at
PNG floating across the screen, dog. That was
creating a
beautiful.
lived-in universe through these villains. It's just that I feel like they're overshadowed often by Martin Lee and Doc Ock. The characterization of Peter and his supporting cast is really great in this game, though. It's a little sluggish on a replay because you forget how much time is spent dicking around in Otto's lab and Feast.
I do
and just
agree
how
with that.
numerous the Miles and MJ stealth sections are, but
I
I like
hate
how they
those
take their time
sections.
to establish these characters, and I think especially Peter, MJ, and Aunt May are great. I've never really understood the MJ hate in this game outside of her admittedly boring stealth section.
It's just the stealth sections, man. That's all it is, I bet. Besides people being upset that it's not lore accurate, I feel like it's just the stealth sections.
As a character, I feel like she's definitely a little impulsive and is clearly biting off more than she can chew, but I think they explain her frustration well, and I see a lot of her
Bombastic
kind
Batman.
of inadvisable and dangerous behavior to be more of a product of feeling inadequate or babied by Peter, more than it is like rational behavior that you're supposed to be completely on board with. I really like seeing both sides of this argument between Peter and MJ because I feel like I understand how they both feel, why they have conflicting
Why did bro type this? This was the worst thing to say in this situation. Like, the worst thing ever. I have no idea why he didn't think that one through.
views on it, and how both of them are kind of being stubborn and crossing the line to a degree. I think it comes off like a realistic, interesting dynamic that treats the audience like adults.
Ow.
Remember that for later, by the way. I don't always agree with MJ in this game, but I do like her character.
MJ
Peter kind of speaks for himself.
gets
I
on
don't
my
wanna go
nerves
too
whichever
deep
she
into
would
this
do
because
some
it's
stupid
so
shit.
discussed at this point, but I think they found the perfect balance of making him seem like somebody who has this whole Spider-Man thing figured out, but he still hasn't given the proper time of day to the Peter Parker side of things. He's mature, but maybe not as mature as he should be at this point, and he has to struggle to do the right thing in a world that's being unfairly cruel to him. It's my favorite
he's
version
getting
of Peter in any non-comic
dogged
medium,
on.
and it's honestly not even that close. One character that I really don't love, though, is
Spectacular Spider-Man queers.
Miles Morales. First of all, I feel like he's a little bit big and weirdly proportioned for somebody who's supposed to be 15 here. And that always throws
that's
me
a
off
fair
with any
point.
like teenage character when they act the age that they are on paper but look like they're about 5 years older. He also has certain
looks-
mannerisms and like, I don't know, maybe mocap.
It's the jacket. It's the jacket that makes it weird. If he took the jacket off, I don't know. His fit is just diabolical, okay?
Issues that make him constantly look like he's walking around with those inflatable muscles from SpongeBob. But I don't know, there's something really weird about his physicality here. Outside of that, I feel like I just don't get much sense for his character in this game, except for the fact that he's a swell fella who likes to help people and is a little nerd.
That's a problem with him throughout this whole series, basically. He doesn't get too much character development, at least enough to separate him from Peter.
And dorky.
You know what I mean?
And spoiler alert, they still haven't found out how to work with his character in any of these games. One thing I do like though is his kind of long-term reaction to his father's death. Like obviously he's very broken up when it happens, but he snaps at Peter a little bit at the funeral without being a total ass. Obviously, like, he just seems like he's lashing out. His mom essentially has to force him to go to Feast and volunteer, and he's rejecting counseling. I like seeing the side of him that's still struggling to figure things out and sometimes has unhealthy coping mechanisms that he slowly has to learn and improve on. It's good groundwork for his character, even though I don't think he has a ton of personality here, and it's something that I think is sorely missing from the later games. I don't feel like the writing here is like genre defining or anything, but I do like the complexity and nuances in the storytelling. This feels like an actual group of people that can be goofy and dorky and optimistic without seeming like an after-school special. So with good core cast dynamics,
I think the writing was just overall a little bit more solid in the first one. It wasn't giving as much of that co-worker talk as the sequel did. You know what I mean?
Even if I stand by the fact that this game kind of speed runs through its villains way too fast, it's no wonder this game became so beloved for its fantastic portrayal of the Spider-Man characters and mythos. Its portrayal of New York, on the other hand, is flatter than my ass. The actual recreation of the city and architecture is great, of course.
What a diabolical
the game's attempts to make you feel invested in the city and the people in it do not end in the results they probably would.
Also, this is one thing, and this is just a stylistic choice, but I would have preferred a more cartoony game. Overall, that doesn't mean anything really against these games. I love these games. But man, I would love like a cartoony, stylized New York where you can tell the buildings apart. And I don't know.
I remember a huge part of the marketing of this first game was the claim that it was going to represent every aspect of being Spider-Man. That means the high-flying heroics, of course, but also having to deal with the tangled web of Peter Parker's life, which leads to missions where you have to do things like tracking down your belongings after you get evicted. It also means that you act as the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, who's just as likely to stop the city from being incinerated as he is to help a kid with his homework. And it's very clear
not really. I keep complaining
really
too
much.
To show this Stop complaining.
Not only making you feel more connected to New York by taking pictures of its landmarks, but centering most of its side content around helping random people off the street. The only issue is that none of these people are remotely interesting to talk to.
They should have done like a GTA thing with all caricatures.
Is completely pointless. The side content in this game, in my opinion, shows a strong understanding of the character of Spider-Man, but a fundamental misunderstanding of why players care about open world content. Because yes, Spider-Man is the type of guy to help somebody off the street without knowing anything about them.
But I'm not that kind of guy.
He has a deep personal connection to care about his community, but me, guy with plastic game controller, does. And you can view that as a little bit cynical. The fact that we parrot the mantra of with great power comes great responsibility, but we also would not be willing to do the things that he is willing to do in these games.
But this is a video game. I just came home from a 12-hour shift climbing on ladders and sticking my head in fucking insulation fiberglass, okay? I want to I want to help people who are goofy and silly, okay?
First of all, duh. I knew that already. The first day I'm getting spider powers, I'm yamming on LeBron James. Miss me with that great responsibility bullshit. And second, these NPCs are fundamentally just pixels on a screen that only exist for the time they're on my TV. It's not until you give them a personality and a backstory and a relatable
The Ben Reilly suit's growing on me the more I see it.
Feel fulfilled in what I just did. This is not a one-to-one analog of helping a random person in real life. And to show just how much this game struggles with developing connections with NPCs, let's do something super excessive and talk about every single side mission
Damn!
in this game. Not all the miscellaneous stuff like the challenges, collectibles, or even the pigeon wrangling. We'll get to that in a little bit. But I want to take a few minutes to talk about what this game considers the full-on actual side missions. And for each one, I'm going to be including 2 time measurements. The character interaction time.
Let's get to the next part. I think maybe we can skip this part a little bit.
The amount you care about a character isn't always directly tied to the amount of time you spend with them. There's a famous story often attributed to Ernest Hemingway, but likely preceding even him, that goes, "For sale, baby shoes, never worn."
Oh my god. What a nerd. I'm just
That's it.
with
It's
y'all.
a 6-word story. But the beauty of the sentence is that it
Cringe.
has a much larger,
Reddit
sadder
atheist.
story once you think about why somebody would buy baby shoes in the first place, and then why they would resell them without them ever being used. So clearly, the
Maybe
length
the
of a
baby
story
didn't like
isn't always
shoes.
directly tied to its impact. And I don't want to make the case that just because these characters have 30 seconds of development time, that these missions are forgettable off of that metric alone. Also, this list is missing some characters
I
like
think what the issue is they should have done the GTA thing where they made each character eccentric, at least when it comes to the side missions like that, so it's more
Taskmaster
fun.
and Howard.
Interesting.
They don't have standard
I like
side
Howard.
missions
I love Howard.
associated with them.
Howard's
But
my
generally
goat.
speaking, this is not a lot of time to spend with the people of New York in a game that's trying to get you to connect with the people of New York, particularly when each of these interactions are served as an afterthought. You can tell Insomniac doesn't have the most confidence in their character work here because they always shoehorn in random combat encounters into these quests in the weirdest ways. Some of these missions just don't need action or stealth whatsoever, but they have them anyways, and I would argue that takes away from the personal, friendly
yeah, but
neighborhood
also
idea
it's a
and makes the small
video
problems
game.
feel unimportant if they're not accompanied by a bunch of fighting.
You know what I
The
mean?
time, the gameplay
I
of
like
these quests
playing
are
the
also
game.
just remixed and strung together versions of the game's random crimes, which are infinite and repetitive as is, so most of these missions are strung
Yeah,
together by a prayer, with no real
I wish
compelling
they had
interactions
more
and no
interesting
unique
car
gameplay
stopping
moments or even
mechanics.
premises. Listen, I don't expect you to reinvent the wheel for side content, but when the only thing separating an official side mission from the basic, ignorable, simulation-y crimes around the city is some robotic character that I feel nothing for, it leads to some very unmemorable quests. I think it's a little damning that the main goal of these missions was to make you feel like you're connecting to the people of New York and helping out the little guy, and I guarantee the majority of people watching this would not be able to name a single quest giver outside of Howard.
Nope.
I mean, how is it even possible that
I
I've
would
played
not
this
remember
game
any of
7
that.
times and have
None of their
zero
names.
recollection of Philip Chang? That's right, idiots. I didn't talk about every single side quest in this game earlier. In fact, I left out
Ain't
5
no way.
entire missions that are all tied to this dude, who has some
Philip
super high-tech
Chang.
facial
I
recognition
don't
software.
even recognize
And I
this
don't think
guy,
before
and
this video,
I 100% of the
would've been
game.
able
I
to
don't
tell you
recognize
his
this guy
name
even
if
a
the lives
little
of
bit.
the entirety of the United States of America and half of Switzerland were in the balance, despite the fact that he has 5 missions in the game. In total,
Damn.
the runtime of these missions is actually longer than the Tombstone missions, and they all follow the same basic formula. Philip gives you a
kidding me?
person's last known location, you go out and find them, and then you beat some people up to free the missing person who's been brainwashed by Martin Lee. Despite having, I say
beat the-
again,
beat the
5 missions
devil out
in
of
this
him.
game, the total amount of time you spend interacting with Philip is 2 minutes, and you learn exactly 2 things about him. His name is Philip, and he developed this software for his thesis project. I think Philip is a
Cool.
perfect example
Thanks,
of a
Philip.
character who was primed for a larger role in the series, and instead was let down by his character writing being purely utilitarian. And on the flip side, I don't think it's a
He doesn't have a character. It's not good character
surprising that the
writing,
game's
dog.
most memorable side character, who I've mentioned a few times now, Howard, has an initial
Yeah.
interaction time that lasts literally as long as your total interaction with the average side character, with him also chiming in every once in a while to talk about
Yeah,
the specific
Howard's
pigeon
a
you're
sweetheart.
chasing, their names, and their personality. On top of that, he just has a very unique problem and a very kind way of speaking. That's really all it takes to get me on board. And I like that this mission is really just simple pigeon wrangling. It's fairly engaging, but has nothing too action-packed for no reason, and it makes for easily the most memorable side objective in the entire game. Now compare that to something like
Yeah.
Harry's research facilities, which always go from, hey, the pollution
Harry's
in this area
research
might be
is
a little bit high, to, oh my
outrageously
god, if I don't swing through that smoke
wacky.
cloud right now, it could wipe out the state of Wisconsin. Most of these missions have you doing really boring tasks.
Yeah,
like
they'll
fixing
just go
traffic.
from like, oh yeah, no, there's a little pollution, and it'll be like, holy fucking shit, if I don't break this car right now, everyone is gonna fucking die. You know what I
square
mean?
billboards running through fixing water leaks. And the funny thing
I
is,
say
if
you
they
know
put
what I
all of
mean
these
too
into a
much.
different context, I might have actually liked how silly and simple they are. Like, if some grandma told me that she was having water problems and couldn't fix it because her daughter was away, and I went out and saw I needed to fix these leaks, and then as a reward she like knit me a little Spider-Man plushie or something,
That would be
I'd
awesome.
love doing this.
Give you a little
That's
spider
a really
cookie.
nice Spider-Man gesture and a character with a simple but meaningful interaction with you. But when I'm doing it for stock image guy, and for some reason if I don't fix the leak,
Mr. Harry
the world's
Osborn.
gonna end or something, feels off. And that's exacerbated even further with how many
Oh
collectibles
my,
and
I
busy
love
work
the
objectives there
I
are in
love
this
the
game.
backpacks
These
though.
really contribute to the world feeling more like a cardboard cutout, a big AR playground, rather than a real place a lot of the time. While Taskmaster challenges aren't exactly collectibles, they are also busy work, which is proven by how endlessly repetitive they are and how dinky the ending is. None of the challenges here have any relation to Taskmaster or his goal of trying to read your moves, and then it's topped off with 2 boss fights with Taskmaster where you, get this, beat him using one move over and over. You know, Taskmaster, the guy who learns and is able
you
to
could beat him in a
duplicate and
couple
avoid
of
your
ways.
moves. Yeah, that guy. You just need to like throw a brick at him 10 times and you win. Taskmaster's entire presence seems like a fancy front for what's essentially random repetitive side activities spread across the city.
Yeah, but I
which
like
is
the
also
challenges.
exactly what you
They
could
can
say
be
about
fun.
the enemy bases in this game. There are
You shut your mouth about the enemy bases. I love playing the video game, okay? I love having an excuse to beat up bad guys. You shut your mouth. Buster.
in just the main game, 4 different types of enemy bases and 19 different bases overall. All of these are basically the same as each other with very slight differences.
Yeah, but it's
Mainly,
fun.
Enemies have different levels of armor, the layout of bases varies slightly, and like the way you get in there is different, but each of them is just 10 to 15 minutes of wave-based combat, which means 3 to 5 hours of this game's completionist run is in just the bases, which is crazy. What's even crazier is that the only thing these bases really give you is a few tokens. There's no real story to any of them until the DLC, where they once again do the absolute bare minimum and end up with yet another
it's
forgettable
Tobey
side
Maguire.
character. Tackling bases doesn't change the world state in any meaningful way, and your reward for finishing all the bases of a certain type is a single character saying a single line.
Stop talking shit about my bases. They're my babies. There should have been more in Spider-Man 2. Be quiet.
About how you
Buddy.
did a good job, and there's now less of these people in the streets, and then it just ends. I feel like when people mention that Spider-Man 2 feels like it has less side content than the original game, the fact that about 5 hours of that is just structureless, storyless, mindless fighting should probably be taken into account. By the end of
Yeah,
the
but
Spider-Man 1
fighting
playthrough,
is
something became
fun.
very clear. The main cast of characters, the way they're all written, and the universe they've been placed in are all very fleshed out and
This guy's a
engaging outside of a couple
buzzkill,
of bumps
dog.
along the way, but the overall world, the tertiary characters, and the side content feel vapid and have only gotten less enjoyable to engage with on replays. And as the games have gone on, it feels like that dynamic has flipped entirely, with the overall open worlds becoming infinitely more fun to engage with, again, outside of a few bumps, but the main cast of characters all essentially turning into a bubblegummy archetype of themselves who all go through the exact same character arcs as one another.
They all talk like
To show the
coworkers.
first half step Insomniac took in both of these directions, I think it's finally time that we move on and talk about the half sequel to this game, Spider-Man Miles Morales.
Oh, I love that game.
I need a haircut for real. It's getting ridiculous. This section is going to be a little bit shorter than the other two, but I do think it's worth looking into the differences that Miles Morales makes compared to the first game, because you can really see where Insomniac was able to improve and where they started to lose. I think having Rhino open this game is super fun.
That
This
is
chase around the city
sick.
at Christmas time is arguably an even better opener than the one in the OG game, but
Love the Christmas vibes
Rhino
of this
is
game.
really just a minor
so
villain here.
elite.
Simon Krieger is fine. He's
No,
smarmy and over-the-top
he's
evil, which
bad
is kind
villain.
of hokey and fun, but in a framework where most of the villains are both evil, conniving sons of bitches and wild, super-powered giga freaks, he's just not that interesting.
He's too normal.
Prowler isn't really a villain here. I really wish this game hadn't been so toothless off the bat with him and immediately put him into the secretly good guy path of redemption.
Yeah, he should have beat his ass.
Because then he's just like a really boring anti-hero. And then there's Finn, who is probably the worst character in any of the Spider-Man games. Her
Yeah.
plan makes no sense. She's got rocks for brains. If she literally spent
This bitch
15
is-
seconds talking to
Yeah,
Miles,
She
there's-
was so outrageously stupid. I cannot. She was so dumb. Fuck you, Miles. I'm just gonna blow up this building. But it'll blow up the whole city. I don't care. Oh wait, it's blowing up the whole city. I have to stop it. Like, come on, woman, Jesus.
Absolutely no conflict, and she does my favorite thing, where she acts like a crazy terrorist who doesn't care about the people she employs, but then the narrative still portrays her as, like, sympathetic and kind of having a point.
You've got to do better, Senator.
It's
All right.
exactly like
One thing I
that.
do like
That's
about
what I
her
was
arc,
about
though,
to
is that
say.
After the
He
game
beat me
ends,
to the
Miles
punch so
calls his
good.
mom about his conflicting opinions on Finn, saying that she sacrificed herself to save everyone, but her stubbornness is also what put them all in danger to begin with, even if he does understand why she wound up in that emotional place. And his mom responds by telling him that people are messy. They sometimes do things that we find hard to understand or forgive, but we don't need to make judgments on their lives or on their deaths. We just need to remember the reason they're important to us. And I think the reason this scene stands out to me so much is because it feels like the first time that characters are talking about complex and emotionally gray ideas in this game. Too bad it's literally after the story ends. Most of the story
Yeah.
is just written a little childishly, and that kind of makes sense because these
Goofy-ass
characters are
berserk
still
sword.
technically children, but they're also children who had to grow up very fast. So when it feels like the main villain is essentially throwing a temper tantrum, it doesn't feel like a kid who's overreacting. It feels like somebody almost being intentionally stupid to maintain conflict. But maybe the bigger
Yeah.
problem comes from when
feels
characters
like
are
the
all
writers were
happy
trying to
and
force
together,
it.
because they have this weird, stilted, over-enunciated way of talking. Like the dinner scene in this game feels like it was just the result of one pass-through in the writer's room where they were just kind of riffing on the basic idea. I just don't buy that any of these characters actually care about each other.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel right. It feels fake. It feels
It
wrong.
kind of feels like they all just met. I actually wrote down in my notes
Co-worker speech.
that the mocapping feels like it's been hit hard by COVID, and maybe these actors straight up
Yeah,
weren't in
probably.
the same room most of the time.
Well-
But considering when this game released, most of its scenes were probably finished before lockdown had much of an effect, so I don't know. Characters' emotions become much more binary in this game. The good guys are always
Ones and
overly
zeros.
good and make no bad decisions, and the bad guys are always mean and stick their fingers in their ear and go la 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 la, I'm not
And are really
listening."
stupid,
And
too.
nowhere is that
Don't
black
forget
and
that.
white characterization scene better than with Miles
Genki.
himself, who definitely is still learning the ropes of being Spider-Man, but that struggle is almost entirely in being able to physically handle the burden that's been placed on him.
Yeah.
In every emotionally tough situation he's faced with, he does the right thing instantly, to the point that having an uncle who's a supervillain doesn't even seem like an inconvenience. He just goes, "No, Unc, you always have the choice to be good." And Uncle Aaron's just like, "Shit, I never thought about it like that." And obviously the argument against
Yeah. He's spitting. This motherfucker's spitting. What am I supposed to say?
this would be, hey, Miles does go through legitimate trauma and difficult decisions, with his best friend being the main bad guy and dying in the end. But that conflict also just boils down to Miles saying, "No, Finn, you always have the choice to be good," and Finn guzzling down extra stupid sauce to remain impervious to his totally valid points. When Miles
It
does
is
struggle
totally
with
valid.
something up to
Be
Peter,
good.
the game always mentions this very fleetingly, and the next time it's addressed, he's essentially overcome his problem already, and he comes off a little inauthentic with how infallible he can be. I also feel like the people at Insomniac
headphones
watched
are
Into
almost
the
dead.
Spider-Verse
Whoopsie.
one too many times, because it feels like the character they set up in the first game, as dull as he was, is colliding head-on with the character he is in that movie, and it's just creating a
Yeah.
dude who has a ton of personality traits, but no actual personality.
Yeah, like, he says he loves music. What kind? You know what I mean? It's just like, they say, well, you know what they say? They say he likes music. He loves art. But you never hear him talk about it. It's just kind of said to you. And besides that one scene in Spider-Man 2, it's like, does he even like music? Besides music playing in, like, montages and, like, him having, like, a couple things in his room.
Now,
It's just
to address
weird.
something that I feel like I've seen online a lot of people mention the fact that Insomniac writes him how a middle-aged suburban white dude would imagine an African-American teenager to be, and that feels a
Yeah.
little bit harsh. I don't feel completely comfortable passing judgment on that, specifically because, first of all, they have writing consultants who have similar backgrounds to Miles, so it's not just a bunch of old white dudes behind this. And
Yeah, but
second,
he's a little out of the
as
times.
you can probably tell, I'm one of the Browns. like Indian or Arab or something. I don't know. They forgot to give me a tag when they sent me over. So I don't feel like I'm an
That was
expert
fire.
on this. I also feel like a lot of people saying this are acting like there's only one way for somebody of a certain culture to speak, and that feels
Yeah, a little racist.
kind of stupid. But what I will say is that when Miles talks about things that he's supposedly interested in, it sounds very inauthentic. Never does it actually seem like he likes music or music production. We're just constantly told that he does. And it doesn't help that Insomniac
Yeah, that's
keeps
what I was
strapping him
saying.
with like the most awkward or dog shit beats of all time when he's shown doing anything musical. Even worse than that though is when him or
His-
other characters are
his
talking
Uncle
about
Aaron
basketball,
has
because it doesn't
horrible
sound like whoever's
beats.
writing it even knows what a basketball is.
Remember when we played ball here in the summers? Your uncle.
Jesus.
Take it to the rack.
Fucking
Well, I
Christ.
demonstrated how to throw it down with authority.
What the fuck is he talking
I bet you
about?
already forgot what I taught you. Feet set, balance, rise up and follow through.
This
What
sort
the
of sounds
fuck?
like an alien talking to his buddies about the orange roundy hoops he saw while visiting.
What is Unc yapping
All
about?
that said, though, what this game does nail a lot better than
Bro
the
has
first game
never
is
been
developing
outside.
the broader world of New York and giving you a sense that you're actually being a friendly neighbor. And that all starts with one
Yeah,
of my
it's-
favorite later additions to
The city is bigger, not bigger. The city is like it's still big in that game while making it feel faster. I think, at least by just a little bit.
the series, the Friendly Neighborhood Spider app. It reduces map clutter, makes you feel like you always have a new thing to tackle in between story missions instead of just having to head straight to the map and systematically grab everything, and it builds a stronger connection between you
Shut
and the
up.
people of the city. I think this game realizes that the first
My
one's
headphones
side
are
quests
killing me.
operated in a bit of a middle ground where they weren't fast enough to feel like quick, nice acts of Spider-Manning, and they also weren't deep or long enough to build actual
Yeah,
connections
that's
with
fair.
most side characters. And while the latter issue doesn't get truly addressed until Spider-Man 2, the compromise they came to here was to create truncated versions of side quests labeled as activities, which do see
Yeah.
you spending a minute or
And-
so doing
You know, you break the icicles off, and the big old snowy weather makes you feel all cozy. It's hot chocolate.
something small like knocking icicles off a crane or putting out fires. And then in the few actual full side missions, a lot of characters you meet are tied into the main story, creating a small, tight-knit Harlem family that permeates through every part of the experience.
It's
A
crazy
great
how
example
everyone
of
knows
this is
sign
the mission
language.
of
I
robbers
took sign language. I forgot everything.
Target Local Biz, where you track down a group of thieves who stole toys that were meant to go to Feast. Not only is including Feast here a good way to get you invested in this mission, since that organization has been a big part of these games, but it also ropes in the existing character of Camilla, who lives near Miles
Is it not cold? His fit seems a little light.
and has been in the story already. She apparently caught the robbers in the act and got kidnapped in the process, so you save her, she's very
Bro.
thankful and sweet, and then you go and take out the robbers. It feels much more personal. The end of the
Yes.
main story also features
I
a ton
agree.
of characters that you helped in the side quests, with them even keeping your secret identity after seeing your face, including the bodega owner who lost his cat, and Gloria, the feast worker. A lot of the actual
Yeah.
missions are just as quick and simple as the ones you do in Spider-Man PS4. They even roughly have the same time metrics, but they just have more staying power because of the increased focus on the
They have a
people
lot
that
more
you're helping as
personality, I
more
think.
than just little quest icons.
A little
Teo,
more soul,
the guy who runs the bodega, has
if
a
you will.
distinct personality. He loves Spider-Man and even named his cat after him, but doesn't like the idea of you running around like you're that guy. But once you go out and save his cat,
I
you immediately
mean-
see him light up, he reluctantly accepts you as Spider-Man, and you get a unique suit out of this interaction also.
Also, I
Not to
love the
mention,
eyes
Teo's
on that
bodega
suit.
is treated
It
like a
looks-
bit of a
those
landmark
eyes look
when
really
Ganke
cool.
and Miles discuss where to meet up at the end of the game. Now, do you remember that side mission I was talking about in the first game where there was somebody who also doubted Spider-Man, but by the end eventually came around to him? Do you remember his name? It's
No.
Police Officer. There's also,
Oh.
thankfully, way less hideouts in this game, and instead of being
Thankfully. You're such a hater. I love the hideouts, and you suck for having a different opinion than me. How dare you have a different opinion, buddy? How dare you? How could you even begin to think any differently from me? Anyways, I heavily disagree. Love those gang
distinctly
hideouts.
wave-based, they're just huge areas with tons of enemies as is, which makes stealth a much more satisfying approach because you don't automatically get detected at the end of the first wave. They're still lacking story and
It is satisfying, but at the same time, the fighting's just so much more
relevant long-term
satisfying.
impact, but at least they're not an absolute chore. I even give credit to the Prowler side mission for sprinkling in so many anecdotes of Aaron Davis and his brother, along with being a decent idea for a collectible-esque side objective. It's just the beat at the end.
Oh Oh God,
Can't take it
so
seriously. But
disgusting.
there are still things that feel phoned in here.
In a
Caches are so
bad way.
basic and boring that in the next game they don't even mark them or make them worthy of being a real collectible. They're just kind of there.
Yeah, they're just littered all over buildings, making lights in the sky that are ugly as shit.
Challenges are still kind of hacked together, although using them as a training exercise is a pretty decent excuse, and Peter's pretty funny in all the voiceovers. And I have no idea why this kid has so many time capsules. You know, you can like go home and play video games or something, right? Why is making time capsules such a consistent hobby?
And how did you get to all those places, Miles? How did you end up on this roof to put that there?
Yours. But I do really like the final endgame scavenger hunt mission from his dad, and I wish the other games would have unique side missions like this specifically for after you wrap up the main story. I do still feel like Miles Morales is overall my least favorite of the 3 experiences, mainly because its improvements are just incremental, it's got a lot less content, and it has by far the weakest narrative, but I do think it shows improvement in areas outside of just the gameplay, especially in fleshing out the world outside of our main cast. This was really just an expansion though, and with Spider-Man 2, Insomniac was really looking to make more of a statement, prepared to show everybody just how much they'd managed to improve on their formula over the years. But in systematically trying to address every single one of the previous game's problems, I feel like they lost a little bit of what made it so good.
This lead
to
up was
begin
good
with.
though. That was a good lead up. I could
So
hear
for
it
this
coming.
section, I kind of want to flip things around. I want to talk about the side content first because I feel like that's better,
Okay.
and then I want to talk about the writing and characterization.
Talk your
after.
shit.
The first thing I
Talk
think
your
this game
shit,
deserves
King.
credit for is improving the basic way side objectives are packaged. Not only does it continue to use the Friendly Neighborhood Spider app, but most activities have clear visual indicators in the world.
I think that I disagree with the visual indicators. I think it makes the map look kind of ugly when every building is glowing purple and all that.
Itself that naturally draw you to them. Also, most activities or collectibles are only placed on the map once you've gotten into close proximity, avoiding the messy, overstimulating map of the first game. Just like Spider-Man 1 had a dedicated side mission to a single villain in Tombstone, Spider-Man 2 has the Flame Quests, which are, and I cannot stress this enough, around 1 billion times better than the Tombstone stuff. Not only do these missions have their own sort of vibe,
But what they brutalized her character. Like, this is not the same lady from the DLC or the first game. Like, she is
in
just
the game with cultish
they
imagery,
kind of just
castles,
ruined it.
darker undertones, and enemy types that literally try to brand you mid-combat. But the central villain and slowly unraveling mystery have so much more presence. Not for
I'm
nothing.
just saying, if you were a Spider-Man fan, like me, a big Spider-Man fan like me, that was most definitely Carnage, dude.
But this string of missions is not only 3 to 4 times longer than Tombstone's, but using the same metrics as I did for the last game, I clocked the cult leader's interaction time at around 4 to 5 minutes, with most of that spent providing some type of development. And this mission also features Wraith, who, even if I think they run character-wise,
definitely did.
runs around 6 to 10 minutes of interaction time depending on what you decide to count, which is almost as much as every single side character from the game combined. Plus,
I think they fucked up Wraith bad. I feel like Wraith should have been a villain, not a Jason Todd-ass anti-hero.
it's got a really great twist ending and a pretty fun boss fight, and honestly, I'm not afraid to say it after playing these back to back. I think this single group of side missions by itself is better than the entirety of Spider-Man 1's side content put together. There's also
You shut your goddamn mouth. I want my
a few
bases
missions
back,
in this
buddy.
game that highlight the regular people of New York a whole lot better, like the activity that has you helping a guy to the hospital who got injured trying to light fireworks in honor of his deceased brother. You end up not only taking out the people who gave them the funky merchandise, but also putting on an impromptu fireworks show in their brother's name. That's pretty
What if it was just like a bad firework dog? You didn't have to beat his
sweet,
ass.
honestly, as is this highly under-discussed side quest that I love called Monster in Queens. To set up this side mission, a blind lady tells Spider-Man that she thinks there's a monster near her house, and when you look into it, you do see some pretty weird monstrous residue all over the place. Turns out, the monster is a stray hunter dog that showed loyalty to its owner but crossed paths with the other hunters, so you and Genki overload him with dog training videos, you go for a little surf, protect him from the hunters, and bring him back to the old lady to act as a guide animal, which she mentioned she needed earlier but couldn't get due to her allergies. I think this quest is really wholesome, it's unique, it's pretty quick, and it has some standout gameplay moments. Some of this game's best missions don't even have any fighting or stealth whatsoever, like the mission where you have to track down Grandpa Earl and just have a chat with him about his life.
Yeah.
with him telling you that he knows
That was
his
pleasant.
time is almost up. I really like this mission, although I have to admit that the voice acting does bug me a little, because it definitely sounds like a much younger dude trying desperately to sound old and doing kind of a mediocre job.
Oh, the French champagne.
But
fucking
hands down,
voice.
the best mission in this game is the one where you reconnect with Howard. It starts off
Oh,
with you
yeah,
just
that's
sitting with
so
him as he
sad. This shit legitimately made me cry,
about the
dude.
many hardships he's faced over the course of his, and eventually he asks you to take his pigeons somewhere where they can be free and happy. You can tell there's something off about the interaction and his tonality, but you decide to take the pigeons up north, and
Yes,
as
sirski.
you do, you experience easily the most serene and beautiful auditory and
Hate the
visual
wind
experience
tunnels,
these games
by
have
the way.
ever put together. It's so peaceful yet so subtly sad, and as Peter cheerfully gets close to his destination, a spot by his house where him and Harry used to hang out when they were kids, Howard calls him and says,
Not many folks have been kind to me in my life.
you remember how I said that not all interaction time is equal? This is just one sentence. He doesn't even fully finish the thought, but it's such an emotional gut punch. And when you
It
get back
is.
to reconnect with Howard after setting his birds free, you find that he's passed on, but seemed to do so in peace. It's a really great
So
side
sad,
quest that
dude.
proves what I said about
Shit
the
made
first
me
game,
cry.
which is that you can absolutely have slow, simple missions that are heavy in characterization and low on combat. And my only teeny tiny complaint is that I just feel like this is a Peter exclusive one, since
It
him
should
and Howard have a
definitely
much
be.
longer history together. I feel like it says a lot that this game has 4 to 5 missions that would easily be the best mission in Spider-Man 1 if it was just placed in there instead, especially considering that game has like a dozen side missions total. On top of that, from a gameplay and story point of view, the hunter-bird objectives are a much more enjoyable spin on the pigeon chase.
Those eyes are so awesome, though. I wish I could put those on the main suit. Just, like, so stylized and so fun.
The enemy bases are not nearly as mind-numbingly repetitive and numerous, and each one gives you insight into Kraven and his family, which is pretty interesting. And even the challenges around the city are way more engaging. I wish it wasn't only Miles that could do these, that's kind of a strange decision, but the Mysteriums are way more fun to tackle than the forced challenges
Yeah.
of previous games. And not only does it
That's
come
a
with
that's a big problem I have. There's 0 challenges for Peter. They're locked behind Miles for some reason, and it's
fun little
it
twist
really
ending, but
frustrates
considering
me.
the challenges in 1 led to a completely phoned-in Taskmaster fight, and the ones from Miles Morales led to a recycled Vulture fight, this
Yeah, no,
one
that
ending in the
Vulture fight was
multi-part,
bad.
trippy, spectacle boss
That
and
was pretty
challenge
sick.
combo that it does, it makes the others feel downright embarrassing in hindsight. The Cultural Center mission feels like it could have used a little bit more fleshing out, but I still think it has an
That one
engaging
was
enough
stupid.
story to hold
I didn't
its
like
own
it.
weight. And one of the more divisive missions that I actually really like is the flashback of a young Peter
I
learning
do
how to
not like
balance
that. Also, it's so funny. You see this picture and you're like, okay, it just looks like the suit from the first thing, and they keep reusing this photo. But they have Peter be so
double
tiny.
life. We see him biking over to the Bugle
Like,
to
look.
sell J. Jonah
This man is not the same one on that picture.
Jameson a picture of Spider-Man for
It
some
just
petty
ain't.
cash as he witnesses a mugging on the way. And while what you're doing gameplay-wise isn't the most interesting, I really like the change of pace. Fighting as an unmasked Peter is pretty fun, and the writing in this section is great. It's honestly some of the best in the whole game. There are definitely still a couple of half-baked side objectives in this game, though. The Spider-Bots are functionally the same as the first game's backpacks, and could have been really cool if they led to an interesting finale, but it's just a total tease here. EMF activities are like a slightly improved version of the research stations that I do appreciate for
I hate the Emily May Foundation activities. They
not being
suck.
as over dramatic as the previous game, but now they're just kind of boring, and I'm still just doing them for a bunch of generic
hate
scientist
them.
people. The Sandman crystal objectives from a gameplay point of view are really tedious, although again, credit for
They're
doing
fun.
more story-wise
I like
with your opening
fighting.
villain than what the Fisk hideouts did in 1. Photography objectives have gone from taking pictures of New York's landmarks to pictures of New York's culture.
I didn't like this as much as the landmarks
I
because
like the idea,
the
but
landmarks
these
you
are
can just
still
kind
way
of
too
drive
quick
by
to
it.
feel like anything besides a chore. And I'm really not the biggest fan of the symbiote nests, especially since this is one of the few objectives that just kind of ends with a single voice line. I also feel like Haley's graffiti mission is just kind of bang average, although it does have
I really don't like this mission. Only for the simple reason, and this is the same reason I don't like the Emily May Foundation missions. I want to play the video game, man. That's
have some
all I'm
nice
here to
sentiment.
do.
People flame this mission way too hard. It's like 10 minutes max, and it has really good sound design and some
It's a sucky 10 minutes though, okay, man?
fun little
Jeez.
ideas. Anybody who rants endlessly over this mission needs to chill out and have a goddamn Kit Kat. But like, it's also not great. It's got a
Ugh,
really
no Kit
antiquated
Kats.
graffiti mechanic that makes Infamous Second Sons also antiquated graffiti mechanic from 10 years ago with like high art. It also features a side character with
Yeah,
next to
that's
no
the truth.
development interacting with 2 even sider characters characters that don't exist before or after this mission, so it's kind of hard to get invested in any of this. It just feels like they didn't get past the idea phase here. Still, none of what I've talked about here is worse than anything that's found in Spider-Man 1, and a good chunk of it is significantly better. And one of the things I wanted to do with this video was to acknowledge that very clear and
I miss suit powers.
commendable
Suit powers are
quality
amazing.
that's
I
kind of
miss
hard
them.
to notice without actually breaking down the game side by side. There are some pretty big improvements here that I didn't even acknowledge when I first played through the game. So then I started wondering why I didn't acknowledge it, and why I felt over time
doesn't
that
have
this game's side
as much
content
heart.
wasn't actually that good. And as silly as it sounds, I genuinely think it comes down to one single group of early side quests that almost single-handedly torpedoed my perception of this game's open world content. Because the thing is, while Spider-Man 1's open world content is almost altogether completely forgettable, it's also not sufficiently bad. The only quest line people find legitimately frustrating or annoying is Screwballs,
Yeah,
and
fuck
it's not only
Screwball.
the shortest one, but she's way more associated with the DLC than anything. But here, there are a few truly bad quests that always pop into my head when I think of this game's side content, and I
EMF,
genuinely
EMF.
think they helped blind me from a lot of this game's merits by just how distracting they were. And yes, I'm talking about the Brooklyn Visions missions.
Oh,
These
yeah,
are
no,
all
those were awful.
So bad. And before you even ask,
The Great Electric Spider.
no, it's not because a couple of the characters in one of the missions are gay.
It's not because he's gay, it's because he's cringy.
Okay, I could not care less. I'm talking strictly about the structure of these missions and how they're presented. The most tolerable of the three is the mission where a group of students tells you that a rival school has stolen the team mascot
Yeah.
before a big game.
I feel like
and
that
you
one's
need to
the
go get
least
him back.
bad.
First of all, I think it says a lot that I didn't even realize that they were talking about a mascot and not
I think, no, alright.
a real person the first time I played it until I actually wound up finding
I don't think that says it about you. I thought the same thing. I think it was supposed to be a twist because they never specified
him
it was a
and bringing him
human.
back. This one has no annoying NPCs, but it does have a special puzzle mechanic that's not only barely a puzzle most of the time because it's so unbelievably simple, but it's also, like most puzzles in this game, completely antithetical to the highly kinetic nature of the rest of this game, while also being a lot longer and more tedious than those other puzzles. And the one time it does open up, the dumbass kids who made it put down color-coded arrows to help you figure out where to go. Now you're just straight up telling me the answer. Jeez,
Easiest
the other two
puzzle.
are even more frustrating though. Homecoming is contrived in its entire premise with an unnecessary combat sequence and an overall problem with the generator that seems so cobbled together, but even that would be fine if the two guys this story was about weren't astronomically stupid. The one who set
Oh,
up
yeah.
this apparently
This guy's a fucking dumbass. Just ask
super
him.
elaborate plan to ask the other dude out to Homecoming somehow manages to mess up every single part of it. Like the instructions
would you
on
have
where
done
Steve
if
needs
I
to
wasn't
go
there,
on
dude?
the other side of the whiteboard. How would this have worked if Spider-Man hadn't conveniently shown up? The banner that's supposed to unfurl for the next message is stuck, so Spider-Man has to pull it down, and one of the two screens doesn't even work, so Spider-Man has to zap it. And genuinely, I can't even describe how annoyed I get at this other dude for going through this slapdash, half-assed little scavenger hunt, only for it to end with a clear declaration of love and a
He's
screen
just like,
that says
"What?"
home and another.
He's like, what? What? What is that even supposed to say? Huh?
That's clearly malfunctioning, and he just goes, home? Huh? What? I don't. What? Home?
Dumbass.
What are you trying to say? You both have CTE, okay? Go to the nurse's office. But what absolutely takes the cake is my least favorite mission in this
Yeah,
game.
do my
is lights,
homework for
camera,
me.
action. This one starts off with a student telling you that they're trying to get photos of the school for a project that's due soon, but their drone broke, so you have to go out and you fix it. Problem solved, right?
Yep.
But no,
Nope.
for some reason this kid asks you to take the photos they need now, and then extra photos that might be nice to have, and then a big old panoramic shot. And then they like kind of joke around
Bro.
about like, ooh, I don't need anything else unless you want to do 10 hours of editing for me.
Fuck you,
This
bitch.
is your job. You have time to do all of this. If you're late, it's on you. I fixed your problem. Now you're just kind of bossing me around. And I'll admit, I
don't
think this is just
understand
the
why
student
Spider-Man
in me
stuck
talking.
around.
I just have PTSD from all these lazy pieces of shit who just tell somebody else to do their work for them.
Nah, he's so real though.
But this mission and all of the Brooklyn Visions missions feel like the students being entirely
I've been in so many groups where I was the one doing all the work up until I don't know, like high school. I just kind of I burn out, so to speak. I was just tired of it, man. Tired of all of it. So I was just like, it's not that important. I feel bad. I became the very thing I swore to destroy. Villain fall off.
competent and taking advantage of
Wait,
Miles,
villain
not
origin.
because they have a real problem, but because they can't do anything for themselves. And just like what I said about the first game, I believe Spider-Man would help these people. That's what he does. But I don't want to help them. They come off
Yeah.
needy and lazy. It left a bad taste in my mouth and made me falsely believe that a lot of NPCs in this game were bossy and inept, which they're not. It's really
No,
just these
no, there's
ones.
a-
And I
there's a
think the game
couple
would be
that are bossy
significantly
and
better
inept.
off if this group of missions was just removed entirely. Considering how early you unlock this also, it just sets you off on the wrong foot. At the end of the day
Yeah.
though, I do think this game beats the mediocre open world allegations. There's still room for improvement of course, but a lot of
I
these
think it's still mediocre. I think totaling everything, it just wasn't fun. Especially the Emily May Foundation. That shit was boring.
missions
and
here set
bad.
a pretty high bar for any future entries in this series, and I feel
Through
a
the
little
Wall
bad
is
that I didn't notice
devious.
that when I first played through it. But Spider-Man 2 has another major allegation. A bad writing allegation. And as much as I want
It's
to be
not
on its
beating the
side, because I
allegations.
really do like some of the story beats and sequences, it is true. This game can have some really sloppy writing sometimes. I do want to defend it on some fronts though, specifically that this game ruins Peter's character. People claim that he's always getting saved by someone, and even in terms of strength, he's been completely nerfed. But honestly, that feels a little bit nitpicky to me. Like, yes, Miles stops him from getting punked a few times, but he usually does the same thing for Miles a few seconds before or after, and I feel like people just ignore that. He also, looking back
That's
on
fair.
it, has a lot of the
But at the same time, Peter should know better. You know what I mean? He should be the experienced one. While Miles is more clumsy, but altogether has more raw power, if that makes sense.
best side quests, has the majority of the focus in the main story, his relationship with Harry is fairly well developed, and the best parts of the game revolve around
I feel like most of the characters are underdeveloped. I didn't care. The game didn't make you care about Harry and Peter because it didn't feel like they were friends. They didn't feel like friends, if that makes sense. I know I said it like 2 seconds ago, but like it felt like they were supposed to be hanging out together. Like it felt like there should have been another person there that they're both friends with. And like he wasn't there, so they were just kind of like, "Oh, yeah,
him
If
with
that-
the symbiote.
you know what I mean?
I'm so
It just-
tired of seeing you goobers bring up this whole fridge thing. He's clearly more caught off guard than anything, and he literally yeets it off of him a second later. This does not ruin his character. Relax. In fact, I think the actual
yeah. The fridge thing
problem
is
that Peter is the
way
only one
overblown.
who has consistent
100%.
and nuanced character flaws. If anything, he's the only character that's done justice, and everybody else is just like one-dimensional and interchangeable with each other.
I
They're
think all the
quirky,
characters
dorky
suck.
geniuses with an insatiable drive to do the right thing, but they also have a layer of self-doubt that's hardly explored until they reach the climax of their emotional arc, and then suddenly they start talking about a bunch of stuff that never even got established earlier in the
then
story.
they're
All of those emotional
self-confident
arcs, by
now.
the way, are the same as one another. For each of our main characters, the journey of self-discovery they go on is, I think I'm a failure and not living up to my potential. I am not getting recognized by somebody that I deeply care about. I am angry or sad, but actually, I've come to realize that the best thing any of us can do is try. Not only is that
Bruh.
way too similar across the board to be considered a theme and is more just one-note writing, but also all of these problems
Yeah.
are so poorly established before they hit a boiling point. There's
Yeah.
exactly one
Like that MJ shit came out of nowhere. And so did this Venom stuff. It didn't come out of nowhere. This one had a little bit more foreshadowing, but
scene where Harry
it was
witnesses his
rough.
dad embracing Peter in a way that makes him jealous, and it doesn't even make sense with the rest of the narrative because Norman loves Harry in these games, but whatever. There are exactly
Yeah.
no scenes that establish the
it's
fact
like they were scared of making the villain a bad dad for
that
some
Peter feels
reason.
like he's not doing enough as Spider-Man, or that he's been letting the city down before the symbiote allows him to be.
Finally, everything everyone needs me to be.
The only people that we've ever seen criticize him in these games are J. Jonah Jameson, which is almost always played for laughs,
Yeah.
Yuri, who still works with him regardless,
She
and
sucks.
most of this takes place after he gets the symbiote, and Police Officer. Spider-Man 2 and Miles Morales even go out of their way to include the Danicast, which I've always...
This bitch right here sucks. Let me stop this and talk about the Danicast. You know why J. Jonah Jameson works? It's because you know the truth and he's wrong. And he's just talking all the shit out of his ass. But it's funny. You know what I mean? So it's entertaining. And he's just so wrong. But he's also witty. It's just, he works because he is the opposite of the audience. He is you know what it is? He's almost like an audience foil. He is saying everything you're not thinking. And it makes it more impactful whenever he's saying something you are thinking. And that's the beauty of it. J. Jonah Jameson is an amazing audience foil. And it meshes so well, and if the writing is good, it's so funny. But she is an insert character to say what the audience is thinking to Spider-Man. But you're already thinking it, so it's just stupid.
Always had a problem
It's
with
dumb.
because the whole point of Jonah as a character, and in this series, the Jonah podcast, is to act as a foil to our positive perception of
Spitting! He is spitting. Exactly what I said. Love your
Spider-Man.
content.
It's a really quick and effective way to
Collab?
show that he's not always embraced, that people have strong opinions against the destruction that he might leave in his wake, which is an interesting thing to consider. And the
It
introduction
is.
of the Danicast feels like a foil to that foil. It's a voice in our ear that says, no,
But you're
you're
the
doing
foil.
great. Yippee, go Spider-Man. We don't need that. We already like Spider-Man. To go back to the emotional arcs though, there's also no scenes whatsoever that establish the fact that Miles feels like he's putting his friends and family in danger, much less anything remotely that would even hint at the fact that he would be letting his mother or his late father down. To the point that it's
Yeah.
almost comical when Mr. Negative gives him these visions of his family being disappointed in him.
Spider-Man helps people. You just hurt them. All you do is take. You put me
This shit came out of absolutely
in
nowhere in the
danger.
game.
You put Haley in danger. For what?
All it's ever done is make me more alone. Put me in more danger.
What happened to the boy that I raised? You're a coward. Stay with my family.
Those voice lines don't even feel like they belong
The
in the
fucking
same game
dad
as
part-
everything else.
the
And
dad
despite
voice lines
Peter
are
and MJ's
crazy.
fight at the end being set up as a big emotional moment, this game also shows no scenes outside of when Peter has the symbiote that suggest that he's been completely ignoring MJ and her problems. Peter and MJ's relationship in just every
Yeah.
medium, and it's also a part of their conflict in the first game, of course, but they seemingly resolve that. And things appear to
And
be
they're just
much
doing it
better on
again.
that front at the beginning of this game. The problem that we do see MJ going through in the sequel is that she doesn't see herself as a good or noteworthy writer, which is actually an interesting narrative thread for this character that I wish was the main focus. But when she turns into Scream, her actual focus is how
She
Peter
starts
has
talking
been
about
ignoring
some
her,
random
which again
bullshit.
isn't established as a problem outside of like the 24 hours that Peter has the symbiote suit. Also, side note, it's absolutely insane to me that she puts out that Spider-Man hit piece the morning after she discovers the symbiote is a sentient beast that literally tried to kill her and is clearly messing with Peter's mind. In what world
Immediately
did you
slap
think this
that
was a
bitch
good
out.
idea? So not only are these all kind of repetitive at their core, but I also feel like it's way less impactful when I don't feel like the character is in the emotional place that you're telling me they are. Especially
Yeah.
Miles. He
It
has
just
this
it feels like story yelling rather than a story.
moment here where he says he can't
You
forgive
will
Lee, but he also can't hold on
be
to this hate
impacted
any
by the
longer.
story.
And while I like this moment,
Buddy.
it doesn't hit nearly as hard as it should because he only shows a very tame version of that hatred in this game.
Whenever I first played this game, I thought that Miles's plot would be him actively down Mr. Negative. But all his story missions are just needless dicking around.
Game. There's only a single sequence where he kind of lapses or gets tunnel vision with wanting to punish Martin Lee, but it's like a split second, and then the rest of their interactions is just Miles telling him, "No, Martin, you always have the choice to be good." And Martin Lee saying, "Shit, I never thought about it that way." I think one of the core issues is that they really want the symbiote to be this big, mean sludge that makes you act mean, when it's always been way more effective at bringing the darker sides of somebody's personality to
it's
light.
been a
In this story,
multiplier,
characters will
not-
be the ultimate form
The symbiote's a multiplication, not an addition. It's when it's good, it amplifies the bad parts of a person's personality. It doesn't add bad things to their personality. Otherwise, it wouldn't be interesting.
of good and kind without the suit and absolute dirtbags with it. And it makes it less of an emotional exploration of the human psyche and how our doubts and insecurities can be dangerous if we give them too much power, and just black suit bad, black suit bad, get it off. And I also have a theory that the reason that these characters are so cheerful and corporate, like annoyingly so in most of the scenes without the symbiote, is to draw this harsher line between good and bad. And I feel like that falls on its face a little bit. Not to mention it gives us moments like the Coney Island mission, which which is straight up written like an episode of Paw Patrol.
I hate the
Pete,
Coney Island mission.
This is the best night of my life. Hey, Harry. Me too.
It really sucks because honestly, the second act of this game, when Peter has the suit,
dog.
is the best stretch of the entire series in my opinion. You unlock some of the best side quests, get some of the most engaging scenes of the game. Seeing the suit from MJ's perspective is
Yeah,
awesome and
That is the one MJ mission. That is dope. That MJ mission is so
terrifying.
rad.
All of the lizard stuff is peak cinema. There's a great story in here. I just feel like it's talking down to me. Anyways, that was my little writing rant. Let's talk about where this series goes from here. Oh shit, I forgot to talk about the villains. I like the lizard, I like Kraven.
I disliked Kraven. I think that he was Kraven the Gladiator, not Kraven the Hunter. Do with that what you will.
Venom? I
Let's
don't
get
think they
through
step
this
on each
video.
other's toes, really. I think the way the story passes over from one to another is way more natural here than the first game, which sort of felt like a last-second swap out. And
Just cut his tongue off and smacked him. Oh my gosh. Look
Another
at this
is way more
elite maneuver. Grip
natural here than the first game, which
slice.
sort of felt like a last-second swap out. And most of the
That
other
was
villains here are just
vile.
establishing more lore. Honestly, I really don't know why people hate this. So, okay, I've spent the last little bit talking about some of this game's problems, even though I stand by the fact that I do really like it, but what do I actually want to see change going forward? First of all, I want to see characters develop to be a lot more distinct from one another, with flaws that have actual consequences. I especially
Yeah.
want to see this for Miles, who I feel like is way too often treated with baby gloves in this series. A great example is when he's trying to apply for a scholarship at school and has
I feel like it's the way they write Miles and pretty much every character. I think it feels like they're scared of something. Feels like they're scared of maybe people saying, "Oh, he wasn't written this way," or even worse, like being accused of being like, I don't know, racist or something. I know it sounds out of left field, but if you play the game, and I don't know, it just feels like they're scared of something, and of like any negative emotions whenever they're like writing these people.
to leave early to go save someone. Unlike what you see in other Spider-Man media where Peter or Miles' responsibilities makes their personal life way more difficult, here he gets
Yeah.
rewarded with a personal call with a recruiter, spends the whole call whispering or yelling because of the situation he's in, and
Yeah, he should have lost that
spitting out some of
recruitment.
the most generic, hardly relevant to a goddamn scholarship answers you could probably think of.
Can you tell me about what's important to you in life?
Being reliable, trustworthy,
What the fuck are you even
someone
yapping
people can
about?
depend on.
Very interesting. Why do you think you'd make a great addition to our school?
I don't give up. And, doing the right thing.
Why would you be a good addition to the school? I never give up. Never. Never in my life have I ever once given up on anything. In my whole life. Gambling? Never give up. 99% of gamblers quit before the big break. Bet you didn't know that. 'Cause
I
you're a
won't
quitter.
let you down.
You start
Fascinating.
insulting him.
And at the end of it, the recruiter is just like, wow, excellent. Well, you seem like the greatest and brightest student I've ever seen in my life. Let's have a personal meeting to discuss your future. They even sort of try to play this off like Miles is being inconvenienced by being Spider-Man because he couldn't have a proper chat with the dude, but I don't know, man. This feels like a pretty incredible outcome for him, and the guy was more than understanding about the whole thing. I mean, even in this game, when Peter has to go off and be Spider-Man,
Yeah, he gets
immediately gets chewed out
annihilated.
and fired for leaving his students. And I just don't get why Miles is exempt from any real hardships unless it's the extreme of death of a close friend or family. Which is also, by the way, something that he's never been at fault for. He's
But-
yet to truly fail at things or make personal sacrifices like a young Spider-Man should. Even with
Yeah.
Finn, she just straight up refused
did
to
it.
listen to anything he said. He didn't fail, she just put her head in the sand and effectively got herself killed. Also, for the love of God, please give this kid an actual personality in the next game. He clearly doesn't like music, and that's all you've given him. Other than that, I like the direction this game went with its NPCs, but I would recommend making sure that the player
Does Miles like... What's his favorite artist? I bet it's... It's like... I don't know, it's like... My Chemical Romance or some shit. He's actually the biggest
is
Swiftie.
naturally inclined to help these people. For example, unless you're intentionally portraying a meaner character, don't have NPCs boss the player around, because the few characters here that came off as demanding really held my attention and made me reflect poorly on the entire batch of tertiary characters. And I also hope that in future entries Insomniac tries to separate the open world activity types from what already exists in this series. I mentioned a lot of things in this game that are essentially improved versions of something that was found in the last game, but I think because they're so similar in concept that those improvements are a lot harder to notice initially. But most of all, I just want to see a story that isn't afraid to display negative emotions, hardships, and conflicting opinions without tying it to some kind of evil MacGuffin or brainwashing. I do think Insomniac really does understand Spider-Man at his core, and they love working with this universe, but they have started to lose some of the nuances as they've gone along. Whether we actually see these improvements going forward remains to be seen, of course. Because on one hand, what they're doing is still clearly working. This game was insanely successful, although the budget is definitely a concern, and I think a lot of the common complaints I see about it online are a little bit unfair. But there are also elements of each of these games
I don't know, man. I just don't like it
truly
very much.
genre-defining pieces of work, despite being right at the precipice of that. And just like they took some of the open world design critiques to heart from the first game, I really hope for the next one they continue to improve on that front while also ironing out some of the writing and character work. If you want to see a bit more Spider-Man content from me, I have a video going through some of the Insomniac Spider-Man hot takes over on my second channel. If you want more
I'm gonna have to go check that out. But I think that's it for today's stream.